We'll start there with this panel. Let's bring in our panel. Donna Brazile, former chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, Washington Post columnist Marc Thiessen, and Susan Ferricchio, chief congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Okay, Susan, the president, it's gotten under his skin, and he's going back to it. He explained it a little bit more in the prepared remarks today. What about this?
Well, it's a big backstory there. He and McCain have not liked each other for a long time. McCain was an early critic of Trump when he was running for president, and Trump always would swing back at McCain, and the whole thing escalated. And, of course, there's the Steele dossier that Trump believes is behind the Mueller report that he thinks is hobbling his presidency. Now, McCain did go retrieve through David Kramer, his aide, the dossier, brought it back to America, gave it to James Comey, and David Kramer, his aide, shopped it around in the press. And that's how it got leaked out to the press. It's not verified. It's salacious. The president is very angry at McCain over this. The reason he started tweeting about this over the weekend, which is where all this started, and then the press asked him about it today during the pool spray, it came up over the weekend because of a deposition that was unveiled where we learned more details about how McCain was involved in the dossier, and that clearly got under Trump's skin, and he's not over it yet.
Clearly. But they built that into that speech, Donna.
Yeah.
Somebody's advising that, right? I mean, what is the thought process there?
I don't know. I mean, since 2015, the president has just been on this tirade against John McCain. When I was a little girl growing up in Louisiana, I don't know about you, Bret, but my parents said, you don't talk ill of the dead, because the Bible says the living will die at some point. John McCain leaves a legacy of service. He leaves a legacy of sacrifice. More importantly, Donald Trump used this occasion at a military construction site, it's a union site, but he goes there and criticized the one guy in the United States Senate who fought for these type of tanks. So it's an odd thing to do. And as I said last night on Twitter, because I get to Twitter myself, I said to Cindy McCain and Meghan and the family, I said, you know what, ignore this. You're better than this, we're better than this. John McCain should be honored for his service, but the criticism, that's beneath the office of the presidency.
Meghan McCain addressed that today on The View.
I think if I had told my dad, 7 months after you're dead, you're going to be dominating the news and all over Twitter, he would think it was hilarious that our president was so jealous of him that he was dominating the news cycle in death as well.
And our colleague Bret Hume tweeted out, speaking of Twitter, why the President of the United States gets involved in petty disputes with someone most Americans have never heard of is beyond me. This is talking about Kellyanne Conway's husband, George. The same goes for his continuing feud with the late John McCain. Why bother? Marc.
So I get why Donald Trump doesn't like John McCain, and he has some legitimate grievances against John McCain, but he isn't hurting John McCain. John McCain is dead. He's hurting himself. I mean, he presumably went to Ohio today because he had a message to deliver about the manufacturing boom in this country that he's unleashed.
Which is a good message.
And it's a great story. You said at the outset of this segment, we were going to talk about that, but now we're talking, and we are. But he changed the subject, and he did it by showing a total lack of decency. And so what he's doing is, one, he's stepping on his own story, and two, there are millions of people in this country who are benefiting from the Trump economy, who have jobs and opportunity and better lives because of this, and they like Trump's policies, but they don't like him because of things like this. So the reason he's in the low 40s in his approval instead of above 50 is because persuadable voters look at this and they say, I don't want to support a guy who goes after a dead war hero.
Minus this, or minus some of these tweets, minus some of this counterpunching, would his approval be above 50?
Well, I think you make a really great point. It's the rhetoric that turns off the people who aren't either on the edge, on the cusp. They like what Trump does for policy-wise, but they hate him personally. And that makes them look at other candidates and think, well, I'll just vote for a Democrat, or I won't show up and vote. And that is his problem, really. They don't understand why he doesn't like McCain, because the backstory is complicated. He tried to explain it a little bit today.
There. I mean, at the beginning.
Hard to explain, and it goes back years. And McCain started it. And you know, he is a hero, obviously. Everybody loved him.
Well, I stipulated that at the beginning. But
yeah,
I mean,
he began it all. And so the two of them escalated it. And that's what, in the backstory, though, is so complicated. The public doesn't get it. They just see him attacking a war hero. I'm like, oh, here he goes again. And it's
all right,
not
so
good.
to Twitter, just before we started the show, great news at Ford. They're investing $1 billion in Flat Rock, Michigan for an auto production on top of $1 billion investment last month in a facility outside of Chicago. Companies are pouring back into the United States. They want to be where the action is. U.S. manufacturing jobs during the Trump administration, Donna, are up significantly. Manufacturing jobs are up, and there is an optimism that he talked about that, again, largely got squelched by the John McCain comments, newsworthy-wise. But this is a story to tell for the Trump administration.
Well, look, I still believe he's building on the success of Barack Obama. Okay.
All right.
Period.
Well,
all right.
I mean, those numbers start 117.
But remember where we started back in 2009 after the Great Recession of 2008. He's building. But this president is not only just stepping on his message. He has to worry about his tax policies. What's driving some of these jobs overseas? What's creating the conditions in places like Lordstown where GM is thinking about closing its plant? Look, the union leader has been reaching out to the president, not the president of the union leader, the local leader has been saying, Mr. President, help us, help us. He campaigned on a promise to save American jobs. They now need him to save American jobs in Lordstown, Ohio.
There is a positive economic feeling, though, if you look at the numbers and you hear some of these states, and frankly, that hope was why he won some of these states, like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Marc, last word on this.
He's delivering for the forgotten Americans who put him in office. Look, manufacturing jobs have been rising for 18 straight months. 490,000 manufacturing jobs created under Donald Trump since he came to office. Obama said those jobs were never coming back. They're growing at the fastest pace in 24 years, and the unemployment rate for people without a high school education reached the lowest point in history, and their salaries are going up by 6%, which is outpacing the rest of the economy. That is a great story. I wish that he would talk about that and not step on his story so more Americans would know about it.
Well, you got to see it here. We just had to cover it all. All right, next up, the 2020 roundup is one campaign unionizes, others try to catch at least some of the Beto press coverage.